June 12, 1945. 3:47 p.m. British POW camp, Yorkshire, England. Elsa Hoffman is carrying a stack of folded linens from the laundry when it happens. She's navigating the narrow corridor between the supply room and the main administration building. Her arms are full. She can barely see over the pile of sheets and towels. She turns the corner and walks directly into someone. The linens tumble. She stumbles backward. A hand reaches out, instinctively, not thinking, and catches her arm to steady her. The contact lasts maybe 2 seconds. His hand on her forearm. Firm grip, warm through the thin fabric of her sleeve. Just long enough to prevent her from falling. Then he releases her immediately, steps back, apologizes in English. "So sorry, miss. Didn't see you coming." Elsa looks up. It's one of the British guards. Corporal. She's seen him around the camp, but never this close. Never close enough to notice the exact shade of his eyes, somewhere between blue and gray. Never close enough to see the small scar above his left eyebrow. Never close enough to feel the warmth of human touch after months of deliberate distance. "It's fine," she manages in her halting English. "My mistake." They both kneel to gather the fallen linens. Their hands brush as they reach for the same sheet. Elsa pulls back as if burned. Another touch. Accidental. Meaningless. Except it's not meaningless. Because Elsa's heart is doing something strange, racing, pounding. Her breath has caught in her chest. Her skin where he touched her arm feels like it's burning. This is wrong. This is inappropriate. This is absolutely not what should be happening. But as she gathers the linens and hurries away, as the corporal calls after her, "Sure you're all right?" his voice carrying genuine concern, Elsa realizes with terrifying clarity that something has changed. 1 accidental collision, 2 brief touches, 3 seconds of proximity. And everything feels different. She's 24 years old, German POW, former Wehrmacht auxiliary who served as a radio operator until her unit surrendered 5 weeks ago. She's been in British custody for 37 days. She's been maintaining careful distance from the guards. Professional, appropriate, exactly as a prisoner should behave. But that brief physical contact, innocent, accidental, utterly harmless, has cracked something open inside her. Some wall she'd been maintaining, some barrier between prisoner and captor, between German and British, between what's allowed and what's forbidden. And now, walking down the corridor with her heart still racing and her arm still tingling where he touched her, Elsa knows she's in dangerous territory. Because it wasn't just the touch. It was the way he caught her, the instinctive care, the immediate concern when she stumbled, the way he apologized as if she was a person rather than a prisoner. It was all of it. And it changed everything. Let's rewind. Because to understand why this moment matters so much to Elsa, you need to understand what the previous 37 days had been like. Elsa Hoffman, born 1921, Hamburg, middle-class family. Father was an accountant, mother a teacher. Elsa studied secretarial work before the war. When the Wehrmacht needed auxiliary personnel, she volunteered in 1943, partially from patriotic duty, partially because clerical work for the military paid better than civilian alternatives. She served as a radio operator, never saw combat, spent 2 years transcribing messages, filing reports, maintaining communications logs. When Germany collapsed in May 1945, her unit surrendered to British forces near Hamburg. Processing was chaotic, thousands of German military personnel, overwhelmed British administration. By early May, Elsa found herself transported to England, to a POW camp in Yorkshire, specifically designated for female Wehrmacht auxiliaries. The camp was organized, clean, nothing like the horror stories propaganda had promised about Allied prisoner treatment. But it was also isolating. The women were separated from male POWs. Contact with guards was minimal and strictly professional. Work assignments were supervised but impersonal. For 37 days, Elsa had settled into routine. Morning roll call, breakfast, work detail. She was assigned to laundry because of her attention to detail. Lunch, more work, evening recreation period, dinner, lights out. The routine was bearable. The guards were professional. Nobody was cruel, but nobody was particularly kind either. Everything was correct, appropriate, distant. And Elsa had accepted that distance, had even welcomed it, because maintaining emotional walls made captivity easier. Easier to not think too much, easier to just survive each day until repatriation came. Then June 12th happened. The corridor, the collision, the touch. And all the careful distance collapsed. That evening, Elsa lies on her bunk, trying to understand what happened to her, trying to rationalize the way her body responded to 2 seconds of innocent physical contact. Her bunkmate, Greta, former cipher clerk from Munich, notices her distraction. "Are you all right? You've been strange since this afternoon." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're staring at the ceiling like you've seen a ghost. What happened?" Elsa is quiet for a long moment. Then, quietly, "I ran into one of the guards today. Literally ran into him. He caught my arm to stop me falling." "And?" "And nothing. It was an accident. He apologized. We picked up the linens I dropped. He asked if I was all right. That's all." Greta waits. She knows there's more. "But when he touched me," Elsa continues, her voice barely audible, "when his hand was on my arm for those 2 seconds, I felt—" She stops, struggling for words. "I felt something I haven't felt in 2 years. Something alive. Something that made me remember I'm a person, not just a prisoner number." "That sounds dangerous." "I know." "Which guard was it?" "The corporal, the one with the dark hair, the one who supervises the administrative building." Greta knows exactly who Elsa means. "He's one of the decent ones. Professional. Doesn't talk down to us. Treats prisoners like humans." "That's the problem," Elsa says. "If he was cruel, I could hate him. If he was indifferent, I could ignore him. But he's kind. And that kindness combined with that accidental touch, and now I can't stop thinking about it." "About him?" "About everything. About what that moment meant. About why 2 seconds of human contact affected me so much. About whether I'm losing my mind for having these feelings about a British guard who probably doesn't even remember the incident." But here's the thing Elsa doesn't know. Corporal David Morrison remembers the incident perfectly. That evening, Morrison is in the guards' quarters thinking about the German prisoner he nearly knocked over, thinking about how his hand caught her arm, thinking about the split second when their eyes met and he saw something there. Surprise, maybe, or confusion, or something else he couldn't identify. He shouldn't be thinking about it. It was an accident. Meaningless? The kind of thing that happens in a crowded camp where hundreds of people navigate narrow corridors daily. But he can't stop replaying it. The way she looked up at him, the way her breath caught, the way she pulled back when their hands accidentally touched while gathering the linens. Pulled back as if the contact had shocked her. "Morrison, you listening?" His bunkmate, Private Andrews, is talking. Morrison hadn't been listening. "Sorry, what?" "I said, you want to come into town tomorrow? Some of us are going to the pub." "Can't. I'm on duty." "You're always on duty. When's the last time you took leave?" Morrison doesn't answer because he's not thinking about leave. He's thinking about a German prisoner with brown hair and expressive eyes who stumbled in a corridor and whose arm he caught for exactly 2 seconds. This is inappropriate. He's a guard. She's a prisoner. The power dynamic makes any attraction completely wrong. He knows this, has known this throughout his year of supervising POW camps. But knowing something is inappropriate doesn't make the feeling disappear, doesn't erase the memory of her looking up at him with an expression that seemed to mirror his own confusion. The next day, June 13th, Elsa deliberately takes a different route from the laundry to avoid that corridor. She tells herself it's practical. Avoiding potential collisions is smart, has nothing to do with being afraid of seeing Corporal Morrison again. Except it has everything to do with that. But the camp isn't large enough for avoidance to work indefinitely. June 15th, during evening recreation period, Elsa is reading in the common room when Morrison enters to conduct the routine security check. Their eyes meet across the room. Just for a second. He nods acknowledgement. She looks away quickly, returns to her book, but she's not reading anymore. She's acutely aware of his presence, can track his movement around the room by sound alone. Hears him speak briefly with other prisoners. Hears his footsteps approaching her corner. "Evening, miss." His voice, that particular accent that makes English sound warmer than German. Elsa looks up. "Good evening, Corporal. How's your arm? No bruising from the other day?" He remembers. Of course he remembers. But why would he ask? Why would a guard check on a prisoner's well-being 3 days after a minor incident? "It's fine. Thank you for asking." Morrison nods. Seems like he wants to say something else. Doesn't. Continues his rounds. After he leaves, Greta materializes beside Elsa's chair. "He asked about your arm." "Yes." 3 days later. "He asked about your arm 3 days later." "I noticed." "Elsa, I think—" "Don't say it," Elsa interrupts. "Whatever you're thinking, don't say it. It's impossible. Inappropriate. Nothing can happen." "I was just going to say I think he noticed you too, that's all." "That's all." As if that small observation isn't huge. As if the possibility that Corporal Morrison also felt something during that corridor collision isn't the most dangerous, thrilling, terrifying thing Elsa has heard in months. June 20th. Elsa is assigned to help in the administrative office. Routine clerical work, filing, organizing paperwork. She's good at it. Efficient. The administrative sergeant who normally supervises this detail is on leave, which means Corporal Morrison is supervising instead. They're alone in the office for the first time. Professional? Appropriate. Morrison explains the filing system. Elsa takes notes. Everything correct. But the air feels charged. Every time Morrison steps close to point at something in the files, Elsa is aware of his proximity. Not touching, maintaining proper distance. But close enough that she can smell soap and something else. Tea, maybe, or the particular scent of clean wool uniform. "Miss Hoffman, you understand the system?" "Yes, Corporal." "If you need clarification, ask. Some of these documents are confusing." "I will, thank you." Silence. Morrison should leave, resume other duties. Instead, he hesitates. "Can I ask you something? Personal?" Elsa's heart rate spikes. "Yes?" "The other day, in the corridor, when I caught your arm, you seemed—" He stops, choosing words carefully. "You seemed affected, and I've been wondering if I did something wrong, if I made you uncomfortable. This is the moment." Elsa could lie, could say everything was fine, nothing happened, completely normal incident. Instead, she tells the truth. "You didn't do anything wrong. You caught me so I wouldn't fall. That was kind. But yes, I was affected, because it was the first time in months that another person touched me as if I was human rather than a prisoner number. And that simple gesture, that instinctive kindness, reminded me that I am still human, that I still have feelings, that I'm still capable of... She doesn't finish. Can't finish, because finishing that sentence means admitting what she's feeling. Capable of what? Morrison's voice is quiet. Of wanting things I shouldn't want, of feeling things that are inappropriate, of being attracted to someone I have no right to be attracted to. The admission hangs between them. Dangerous, honest, impossible. Morrison is very still. "Miss Hoffman—" "Elsa. My name is Elsa." Elsa, I need to tell you something. That moment in the corridor affected me, too. I've been thinking about it for 8 days, which is completely inappropriate, given that I'm a guard and you're a prisoner. But inappropriate or not, it's true. They're standing 3 feet apart, not touching, not violating any regulation, but the distance between them feels charged with everything unspoken. What do? Elsa asks. Nothing. We maintain appropriate boundaries. We acknowledge what we're feeling while recognizing that acting on it would be wrong given the power dynamic. And we wait until you're no longer a prisoner, and I'm no longer your guard. It's the right answer, the moral answer, and completely inadequate for what they're both feeling. How long until repatriation? Weeks, maybe months. The system is overwhelmed. And then? Then you go back to Germany. I stay in England, and we write letters if you're willing. See if this feeling survives distance and normal circumstances. It's a plan. It's appropriate. It's agonizing. I should go, Morrison says. This conversation is already more personal than it should be. Yes? But neither moves. They stand there, 3 feet apart, both aware that this moment is ending, that propriety demands separation, that the power dynamic makes anything more than conversation completely wrong. Elsa? Her name in his accent. It does something to her. I want you to know something. What you're feeling, what we're both feeling, it's not wrong. The circumstances are complicated, but the feelings themselves aren't wrong. It feels wrong because you're a good person who understands appropriate boundaries. But you're also a human being who's been isolated and frightened for months, who just experienced human kindness and physical contact after a long time without either. Of course you responded to it. That doesn't make you weak or inappropriate. It makes you human. The words are almost too much. Elsa feels tears threatening. She nods, not trusting her voice. Morrison leaves, returns to his duties. Elsa continues filing paperwork with shaking hands. The summer passes. Elsa and Morrison maintain careful distance, professional, appropriate, but they're both aware of each other in ways they weren't before June 12th. Every time their paths cross, that awareness crackles between them. Other prisoners notice. Greta definitely notices. You're torturing yourselves, she observes one evening. Both of you dancing around this attraction while maintaining proper boundaries. It's admirable and frustrating to watch. What else can we do? He's right about the power dynamic. I know, but watching two people who clearly care about each other maintain such careful distance because they're being ethical about an impossible situation. It's both beautiful and sad. August 1945. The war with Japan ends. Repatriation processes begin accelerating. Elsa receives notice. She'll be processed for return to Germany in September. 1 month, 4 weeks. Then she'll leave this camp, this country, this impossible situation where she developed feelings for a British guard who treated her with kindness after she collided with him in a corridor. Morrison receives the same information. He requests a meeting with Elsa, official, supervised, to discuss repatriation arrangements. They sit across a desk, a translator present, everything proper. Morrison explains the process, the timeline, what she should expect. Then, after the translator leaves, while they're technically still supervised, but at a distance that allows privacy, Morrison says, "Elsa, I have something for you." He hands her an envelope. "This is a letter, my address in England. If you're willing, after you're settled in Germany, write to me. Tell me you're safe. Tell me how you're rebuilding your life, and if what we both felt in June was real, if it survives distance and normal circumstances, then we'll figure out what comes next." Elsa takes the envelope. What if it wasn't real? What if it was just circumstance and isolation and the strangeness of captivity? Then the letters stop and we both move on, but I don't think it was just circumstance. I think what started in that corridor was real, and I think it's worth finding out. September 15th, 1945. Elsa boards a transport back to Germany, back to Hamburg, back to ruins and displacement and the massive task of rebuilding a shattered country. She carries the envelope, Morrison's address, and the memory of 2 seconds in a corridor that changed everything. 3 weeks later, from a temporary housing facility in Hamburg, she writes her first letter. Testing whether the feeling survives separation, his response arrives 6 weeks later. Careful, hopeful. Continuing the conversation. The letters continue, weekly at first, then twice weekly. They write about rebuilding, Elsa finding work, Morrison transitioning back to civilian life, teaching at a grammar school in Yorkshire. They write about books, about hopes, about the strangeness of former enemies corresponding. And through letters, the feeling that started with an accidental touch deepens into something undeniable. April 1946. Morrison writes, "I'd like to visit Hamburg, see you outside the context of prison camp, see if what we both felt translates to normal circumstances, if you're willing." Elsa writes back immediately. "Yes, please come. I need to know if I'm remembering correctly, if that corridor collision meant what I think it meant, if everything really changed in those 2 seconds." He arrives in May 1946. They meet at a cafe. It's awkward at first, the echo of their former dynamic, the strangeness of meeting as equals. But then Morrison reaches across the table, takes her hand, and Elsa feels the same thing she felt in June 1945. That electric awareness, that sense of everything shifting, that recognition that some connections happen in an instant and last forever. "It's still there," she says. "Yes, it's still there." They marry in 1947. Morrison gets a teaching position in Hamburg. They build a life together from the wreckage of war. Their children grow up hearing a simplified version. "We met after the war, in a prison camp. It's complicated." The full story, the collision, the accidental touch, the way 2 seconds changed everything, they keep to themselves. A private memory of the moment when carefully maintained walls came down and 2 people recognized something neither expected. 60 years later, Elsa would tell their grandchildren, "Your grandfather caught my arm to stop me from falling. It was nothing." 2 seconds. But in those 2 seconds, I felt more human than I had in months. I felt seen. I felt like I mattered. And that feeling changed everything. Just from a touch? Just from a touch, and from the kindness behind it, and from the recognition that despite everything, the war, the captivity, the rules about prisoners and guards, we were both just people who collided in a corridor and felt something neither could control. Their story proves something important. That connection can happen in an instant. That 2 seconds of accidental contact can crack open walls that seemed impenetrable. That sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest touch. Elsa Hoffman brushed against Corporal David Morrison in a corridor on June 12, 1945. 2 seconds of contact, one hand steadying her arm, one moment of looking up and meeting his eyes. And everything changed, not immediately, not dramatically, but irreversibly. That touch became the moment both of them referenced later, the split second when possibility emerged, when walls crumbled, when 2 people recognized something neither was looking for. If this story moved you, if you understand how a single moment can change everything, hit that subscribe button. Because history is full of instant connections, of touches that mattered more than they should, of 2 seconds that determined entire futures. He brushed against her. She stumbled. He caught her. And in those 2 seconds, in that narrow corridor in a Yorkshire POW camp, everything changed. The rest, the letters, the visit, the marriage, the life they built, that was just consequence. The inevitable result of what began when skin touched skin and two people recognized each other across every barrier that should have kept them separate. 2 seconds, one touch. Everything changed. That's the story. Simple, profound, true. Sometimes that's all it takes.